I parked my car in the gravel lot outside the community theater, the engine ticking as it cooled in the early evening air. A soft breeze rustled the leaves in the trees above, and the scent of fresh-cut grass filled the air. In my hand was a bouquet of roses, Jill's favorite. She always said they reminded her of the gardens at her grandmother's house. I imagined the smile she would give me when I handed them to her after the performance. I pictured her laughing, surprised, pulling me into a hug. The warmth of that thought made me feel at ease as I walked toward the entrance. The children's theater was smaller than the main auditorium, designed for intimate performances, perfect for a play about Little Red Riding Hood. Jill had been talking about the production for weeks, excited to dive into what she called a mature retelling. She was always so passionate about her roles, whether it was in a serious drama or, in this case, a whimsical children's play. That's one of the reasons I fell in love with her energy, her dedication. I always admired how she lost herself in her characters. Tonight, I wanted to surprise her. She had no idea I was coming. I'd taken off work early, ignoring her vague comment about how the performance was just a silly little thing for the kids. I knew it was important to her, even if she downplayed it. Jill never liked to seem too eager about anything, always pretending she was more relaxed than she really was. But I knew her well enough to see through the act. I bought a ticket from the woman at the counter and slipped into the back row of the theater, hoping to stay unnoticed. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd of parents and children as the show began. It didn't take long for Jill to appear on stage, dressed in a bright red cape, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. She looked radiant, alive with that spark she always had when performing. Her voice was soft but commanding, her lines flowing effortlessly. I smiled to myself, watching her in her element. I'd seen her perform countless times, but there was something different tonight. Maybe it was because she didn't know I was there, watching her, admiring her from the shadows. Then, he appeared, the wolf. At first, I didn't think anything of it. He was tall, lean, dressed in a shaggy wolf costume that covered most of his body. His face was partially obscured by a mask, but his eyes were visible, gleaming beneath it. He moved with confidence, prowling around the stage as if he owned it. His lines were delivered smoothly, with a casual charisma that seemed to draw the audience in. But then, something shifted. It wasn't just the way he looked at her, it was the way she looked at him. The subtle glances, the way her body leaned into his as they performed their scenes together. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, that I was just being paranoid. But as the play continued, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on between them than the script called for. As they reached the climactic scene, the confrontation between Little Red and the wolf, I noticed how close they were standing. Too close. His hand brushed her arm lightly, a touch that wasn't part of the performance, wasn't scripted. I could see it in her eyes, the way they flicked up to meet his. There was a charge in the air between them, something electric, intimate. I leaned forward in my seat, my heart beginning to race. Was I seeing things? Maybe it was just the intensity of the moment, the heightened emotions of the scene. But then, his hand slid lower, resting on the small of her back, pulling her closer. She didn't pull away. I felt my stomach drop, my throat tightened, and suddenly the theater felt too small, the walls closing in. The audience around me was oblivious, clapping and laughing at the playful dialogue, while I sat there frozen, my mind spinning. Is this part of the play? I muttered to myself, my voice barely above a whisper. A few people in front of me turned to glance back, but I didn't care. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the stage, from them. The final scene ended, and the actors took their bows. Jill smiled broadly as she stepped forward, acknowledging the applause. I clapped half-heartedly, my palms barely making contact. I didn't want to believe it, but the seed of doubt had been planted. As the lights came up, I stayed in my seat for a moment, staring at the stage where she had stood just moments ago. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe, but no. There was something real there. I had seen it with my own eyes. Determined to get answers, I made my way backstage, weaving through the small crowd of parents and children congratulating the cast. I knew the layout of the theater well enough to find my way to the dressing rooms. I heard voices, faint at first, but growing louder as I approached the hallway leading to Jill's dressing room. Then I heard her laugh. That soft, lilting laugh I knew so well. The laugh she reserved for when she was truly at ease, completely comfortable. But it wasn't with me. I rounded the corner quietly, stopping just outside her door. It was slightly ajar. Through the small crack, I could see them, Jill and the wolf, still in his costume, though the headpiece was off now. He was sitting on the edge of the small makeup table, leaning in toward her, his hand resting lightly on her waist. She was standing between his legs, close, too close. "Are you sure no one saw us?" he asked, his voice low and teasing. Jill laughed softly, her fingers playing with the edge of his wolf costume. "Relax, Rob. It's just a kid's play. No one cares." My heart hammered in my chest, each beat louder than the last. "Besides," she added, her voice dropping to a whisper, "it's fun keeping it a secret." That was it. The final blow. I turned and left without making a sound, my mind reeling, my world collapsing around me. The flowers, still clutched tightly in my hand, were now nothing more than a sad, crumpled mess. I drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring into streaks of color as I navigated through the night. The weight of what I had just witnessed hung heavily in the air around me, and my knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel. Each red light felt like an eternity, and my mind raced with thoughts I couldn't seem to quiet. As I stepped into the house, the familiar scent of vanilla candles and freshly laundered sheets filled my nostrils, but tonight, it felt like a lie. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter with a loud clang, the sound echoing through the silence. I needed to think, needed to process the betrayal that had just shattered my world. I paced the living room, the dark corners of the room closing in on me. My heart raced with every passing second, fueled by anger and disbelief. Jill had shattered everything we'd built together, and I couldn't let her get away with it. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of an easy escape. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Derek, an old college buddy, had made a name for himself in tech, specializing in surveillance systems. It felt like a long shot, but if anyone could help me gather evidence, it would be him. "Hey, man," Derek answered after a few rings, his voice upbeat and casual. "What's up, Derek? I need a favor," I said, my voice tight. It's urgent." "Sure, anything." "You sound serious. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, the words spilling out in a rush. "I think my wife is cheating on me. I need you to help me set up some cameras and microphones. I want proof, Derek. I want to know who this guy is and what's going on." There was a brief silence on the other end before Derek responded, "Wow, man. I'm sorry to hear that. But you know I can help. Just tell me what you need." I could almost hear him shifting into his work mode. "I need discrete cameras set up in our living room, her dressing room at the theater, anywhere she spends time with him. I want to capture everything." "Got it. I'll bring over some gear tomorrow night. We'll set it all up while she's at rehearsal." "Thanks, Derek," I said, feeling a glimmer of hope in the chaos. I can't believe this is happening." "I know, bro. But you'll get through it. Just keep your head clear, okay?" After hanging up, I sank into the couch, running a hand through my hair. I had a plan now, something to focus on instead of the pain. Gathering evidence would give me power, a chance to expose her betrayal, to take control of a situation that had spiraled out of my grasp. The following day dragged on. I couldn't focus on work, each tick of the clock reminding me of what I'd seen. I had texted Jill during the day, asking how rehearsal was going, trying to act nonchalant. She replied with a simple, "Good. We're almost ready for opening night," and sent me a cheerful selfie from backstage, her smile bright against the dim lights. I felt a bitter pang in my chest. How could she look so happy when she was living a lie? That night, Derek arrived with a duffel bag full of surveillance equipment. He set everything up in the living room, pointing the camera at the couch where Jill often sat to rehearse lines. "This should cover most of the space," he said, securing the last piece. "The audio will pick up well too. Just make sure you're out of sight when you go over to check the footage." "Thanks, man," I said, feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt. "I just don't want her to suspect anything." "Trust me, she won't. Just keep playing the doting husband for now. It'll pay off." Derek turned his attention to the small microphone he was placing in the corner of the room. "So, do you know anything about this guy?" I hesitated, my thoughts drifting back to the wolf in the costume. "Not much. Just that he's her co-actor in the play. I overheard some talk about him, but I didn't think it would come to this." "Yeah, well, keep your ears open. If you can get a name, I might be able to dig up some dirt." I nodded, the thought making me feel sick. I didn't want to know more, but I also needed to know everything. "I will." After Derek finished, we shared a few beers, and I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. But each sip felt heavy in my stomach, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was slowly losing everything I held dear. That night, as I lay in bed beside Jill, I fought the urge to pull her close. The warmth of her body felt foreign, her soft breaths a stark reminder of the lies she was living. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, steeling myself for what was to come. Over the next few days, I settled into a routine of careful observation. I maintained the facade of the perfect husband, all the while gathering my evidence. Each night, I reviewed the footage Derek helped me set up, my heart racing with anger and disbelief as I watched the moments of intimacy unfold. One evening, I caught her rehearsing lines with the wolf, Rob. I finally learned his name. The way they laughed together, the lightness in their voices, made my blood boil. I clenched my fists, reminding myself of my purpose. I decided to confront her in a few days, once I had gathered enough evidence to make her face the truth. I wanted to watch her squirm as she realized I knew everything. It was time to take control of my life again. One night, as I sat watching the footage, I noticed a particular moment that made my blood run cold. Jill brushed a hand across Rob's cheek, her laughter ringing in my ears like a cruel mockery of everything we'd shared. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising anger within me. "I'll make you pay for this," I whispered into the darkness, my voice a low growl. "You'll regret ever betraying me." The day of the confrontation dawned, gray and overcast, as if the sky was reflecting the storm brewing inside me. I paced the house, my mind racing, replaying every moment I had witnessed over the past few weeks. The anger that had been simmering was now a boiling pot, ready to spill over. Today was the day I would finally confront Jill. I had been meticulous in my preparations, gathering enough evidence to ensure there would be no escape for her. I reviewed the footage one last time, the images of her laughter and flirtation with Rob etched into my memory. Each clip was a dagger to my heart, but it also steeled my resolve. I would show her that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. When Jill walked through the front door that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, a notebook and pen in front of me as though I had been working on something mundane. The sound of her heels clicking against the hardwood floor filled the silence, and I forced a smile, trying to play the part of the unsuspecting husband. "Hey, babe," she chirped, her voice bright and cheerful as she hung up her coat. "You won't believe what happened at rehearsal today." "Really?" I replied, my tone flat. "I think I have a pretty good idea." She frowned slightly, noticing the tension in my voice. "What do you mean?" I pushed my chair back and stood, crossing my arms over my chest. "I mean, I've been watching the footage, Jill. I know everything." Her expression shifted instantly from cheerful to guarded, her smile faltering. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Don't play games with me," I snapped, the anger spilling over. "I saw you with him. I saw everything." "Everything? What do you mean?" she asked, feigning confusion, but I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. "Don't act innocent," I shot back, my voice rising. "I saw you brushing your fingers across Rob's cheek like it was something special. I saw you laugh with him like you've never laughed with me." Jill's face drained of color. "You were spying on me," she whispered, her tone incredulous. "Spying? No. I was gathering evidence of your betrayal, I retorted, pulling out my phone and scrolling to the video that had made my blood boil. Here, watch this. I pressed play, and the sound of her laughter filled the room, the intimate words exchanged between her and Rob ringing in my ears like a death knell. As the video played, Jill's face contorted with regret and embarrassment, but her eyes were defiant. "This is a mistake," she said quickly, trying to regain control of the situation. "It's just acting, and you know that." "Acting?" I echoed, incredulity lacing my voice. "You call that acting? You've crossed a line, Jill. This isn't just some performance, you're in a relationship with him." She shook her head vehemently. "It's not what you think. We were just having fun, rehearsing lines. You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I stepped closer, my voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. "You're the one who's been lying to me. You're the one who's been hiding this affair right under my nose while I've been nothing but supportive." Jill opened her mouth to respond, but the words faltered as she searched for an excuse. I cut her off, unable to contain my fury any longer. "You don't get to explain yourself. You made your choice when you decided to let him touch you, to laugh with him, to look at him like that. I'm done with your excuses." Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't ready to let up. "You betrayed me, and I won't just sit back and let it slide. I'm filing for divorce." She took a step back, her expression shifting to panic. "Please, don't say that. We can work this out, I promise. I didn't mean for it to happen." "Didn't mean for it to happen?" I echoed, my voice laced with disbelief. "You can't just dismiss this. You think you can just waltz back into my life after this? After what you've done?" "Rob is just a co-actor. It didn't mean anything." "I love you," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "Love?" I scoffed, my heart hardening. "What does love look like? Because what I've seen is betrayal and deceit. I can't trust you anymore, Jill. Not after this." "Please, don't do this," she whispered, her voice trembling, the bravado fading. "You're overreacting, you're being unfair." "Unfair?" I leaned closer, the tension palpable in the air between us. "You've been unfaithful, and I'm the one being unfair." "No, Jill, it's time you face the consequences of your actions. You've ruined us, and now I'm taking control." I turned my back on her, needing to distance myself from the emotions threatening to swallow me whole. I headed towards the living room, leaving her standing there, vulnerable and exposed. I felt like a fool for ever believing that we could have a normal conversation after everything that had happened. "Where are you going?" she called after me, her voice breaking. "I'm going to pack my things." "I'll find somewhere else to stay for now," I replied, trying to maintain my composure, even as the weight of this decision crashed down on me. "No, please don't go," she begged, her voice softer now, edged with fear. "Let's talk this through. We can fix this. I can change." I paused, glancing back over my shoulder. "Change? After what you've done? I don't even know who you are anymore." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost felt pity. But it was buried deep beneath the anger and betrayal. I had to stay strong. I had to take control. "I'll file for divorce tomorrow," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "And don't bother trying to convince me otherwise. You've made your choice." With that, I walked away, my heart heavy but resolute. I had to be strong for myself now. The following days felt like an eternity. I spent hours locked away in my small home office, poring over the footage Derek had helped me gather, mentally preparing myself for the impending storm that was about to break. Each video clip replayed in my mind, the laughter, the tender touches between Jill and Rob haunting me. I knew I had to be methodical as I prepared for the fallout. Once I filed for divorce, I immediately informed my close friends and family. I needed a support system, a way to reinforce my decision and remind myself that I wasn't alone in this. I decided to start with my brother, Mark. He was always the voice of reason, and I hoped he could help me keep my head straight amidst the chaos. I called him one evening, my heart racing as I waited for him to pick up. "Hey, man. What's up?" Mark answered, his tone bright, oblivious to the storm brewing in my life. "Can we talk?" "I really need to see you," I replied, my voice tinged with urgency. "Of course." "Is everything okay?" he asked, his tone shifting to concern. I hesitated, feeling the weight of what I had to share. "No, it's not. I think Jill's been cheating on me." Silence followed for a moment before he responded, "What? Are you sure?" "I have proof," I replied, my voice steadying. "I set up cameras and caught her with her co-actor. It's real, Mark. I'm filing for divorce." "Holy shit, man. I'm so sorry." "What do you need from me?" he asked, his support palpable even over the phone. "Just, come over." "I need someone to talk to," I said, feeling the pressure of the world lifting slightly with his support. An hour later, Mark arrived, concern etched on his face as I opened the door. "Hey," he said softly, stepping inside. "Let's get to it. What do you have?" I led him into my office and sat down at my desk, opening my laptop. I pulled up the video, my hands trembling slightly as I clicked on the file. The room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation as the footage began to play. Mark leaned closer, his eyes glued to the screen as Jill and Rob appeared, their chemistry evident even through the grainy footage. I felt a mix of anger and sadness wash over me as I watched them interact, the laughter that had once filled our home now twisted into something ugly. As the video ended, Mark looked at me, disbelief written all over his face. "Dude. I'm so sorry. This is beyond messed up. You don't deserve this." "I know," I replied, my voice shaky. "But it's happening, and I can't just sit back and let her get away with it." "What's your plan?" Mark asked, leaning back in his chair, his brows furrowed in thought. "I'm going to confront her one last time, this time with evidence. I want her to know that I'm not the fool she thought I was," I said, a sense of resolve washing over me. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "It could get ugly," Mark cautioned. "I need closure," I insisted, feeling the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. "I can't move on until I face her directly and make her see the damage she's caused." "All right," he said, nodding. "I'll be there for support. Just tell me when." With my brother's support, I felt a little more prepared for the confrontation I had been dreading. The next day, I sent Jill a message, requesting to meet at a coffee shop. I figured it would be a public space, neutral ground, where we could both keep our emotions in check. As I sat at the small table, waiting for her to arrive, I felt a wave of anxiety crash over me. I fidgeted with the napkin, folding it over and over as I recalled our happiest moments, those fleeting glimpses of love that felt like a distant memory now. When Jill walked in, I caught a glimpse of her apprehension, but she held her head high, a mixture of defiance and vulnerability in her eyes. She approached the table and sat down across from me, her expression unreadable. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice steady, but I could hear the underlying tremor. "Let's cut to the chase," I replied, unable to mask the bitterness in my tone. "You know why we're here." Her brows furrowed slightly. "I do. And I want to apologize for everything. I never meant for it to happen." "That's not good enough," I said, leaning in, my voice low but firm. "I've seen the footage. You and Rob, it's clear that this wasn't just some innocent fun." She flinched, but quickly regained her composure. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I scoffed, incredulous. "You think it's just a mistake to let another man touch you? To share those moments? You call that love?" "It was just acting." "It didn't mean anything," she shot back, her voice rising. "Then why did you lie to me?" I demanded, anger boiling to the surface. "Why not just tell me? Why sneak around?" "Because I was scared," she admitted, tears pooling in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't think it would go this far." "Too late for that now," I said, my voice cold. "You made your choice, Jill. And now I'm making mine. I'm filing for divorce, and I won't let you manipulate me anymore." Her face fell, the defiance crumbling into despair. "Please, don't do this. I can change. We can work this out. No, you can't, I replied, the finality of my words hanging in the air. You've lost my trust, and that's not something you can just regain. I'm done. I deserve better than this. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. This contains the evidence I've gathered, along with our finances and the way you've been exploiting our savings. You won't just walk away from this without consequences. Jill opened the folder, her face paling as she glanced through the documents. You're really going to do this? She whispered, her voice shaking. I have to, I said, feeling the weight of my resolve settle firmly on my shoulders. This isn't just about you and Rob. It's about me taking control of my life back. I won't be the man you walked all over any longer. She stared at me, her expression a mixture of heartbreak and disbelief. You're serious about this? Dead serious, I replied, standing up from the table. I'm moving forward with my life, with or without you. You'll see how the pieces fall into place. As I turned to leave, I felt a rush of relief mixed with the familiar ache of loss. The fallout was inevitable, but I had finally found my voice. I wouldn't allow her betrayal to define me any longer. I was reclaiming my life.